Hello and welcome to another booktube video from me, Martha May Books. And today I have a continuation of my unhaul that I posted, I think last month. This is the opposite of an unhaul, but kind of not, because it's not a haul. I have here all of the books that I decided to save from my unhaul because I haven't read them. So when I did my unhaul, I got rid of all of the books that I own, that I had read, that either I didn't enjoy that much or I did give 5 stars to, but I just didn't feel like keeping because for whatever reason they didn't spark joy within my soul, I think is the main reason why I didn't keep them. I was like kind of going Marie Kondo, but at the same time not, because I have these books here, and these books are books that don't necessarily spark joy. I'm not desperate to read them immediately, but I don't want to get rid of them because I haven't read them. I feel weird getting rid of books that I haven't read because I always think like, what if it could have been my favourite book? So I've got these books here. I've got just under 30 books. I'm going to say that in case my counting was wrong. I've got just under 30 books here. So the likelihood is I couldn't read them all in a year. I probably could because I read like over 80 books last year, but I'm hoping to spend less time at home this year. So we'll see. But my hope is to try and read all of these within the next 2 years, and then if I haven't read them within that time, maybe I'm not ever gonna read them. So that's my plan. I'm gonna talk through them. I put them in different categories because I kind of feel a type of way about all of them for various reasons. Let's get into them. The first ones are ones that were in my previous unhaul video or even the one way before, which I have since decided to not unhaul after all. So the first book in that is His Bloody Project by Graham McRae Burnett. I said in my unhaul that I want to get rid of this because I've read it and I know what's going to happen, so what's the point in keeping it? But actually, on reflection, I did really enjoy this story and I do want to keep it. And then I also have Room by Emma Donoghue, which I unhauled a long time ago. I don't even know if I unhauled this in my first ever unhaul video that I did on BookTube, but I am currently listening to The Pull of the Stars by Emma Donoghue and I am loving it, and so I've decided to take this out of my unhaul pile. The reason why I still have this, even though I decided to get rid of it so long ago, is because charity shops aren't open, so I can't get rid of it. But it's a good thing because I decided to keep it in the end. Then, of the books that I actually haven't previously unhauled and are still sitting on my shelves, and I'm either going to read them or if I don't read them, get rid of them. The first pile I have is authors I've tried before and didn't love, or that other people have read and didn't love. So the first one I have is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. First of all, I love this cover. I bought this because of early BookTube. Everybody was talking this and loving it, and I didn't really know what it was about, but I got overexcited and I bought it. And to be honest, it just doesn't sound like something I'd be massively interested in anymore. Not only that, but I have tried to read this before now and I couldn't get into it. So there's Uprooted by Naomi Novik. It's got a lot of good people blurbing it. It's also got Robin Hobb on the actual front, but I'm not a massive fan of fairy tale retellings anyway, just because I don't know why. I feel like sometimes you just full on know exactly what's going to happen, and so it kind of defeats the point. It's kind of like this video is so weird because I'm just being mean about these books. But I'm not trying to be mean, they're ones I've saved, so my hope is to read them. Next I have La Belle Sauvage, or the first book in the Book of Dust series by Philip Pullman. So I read His Dark Materials, the whole series. I loved the first book and I didn't really like the second and third book. I just felt like it kind of all went off of the rails and he was trying to say and do too much, and it didn't make any sense to me. And so I've got the Book of Dust, which I actually bought before I had read or owned any of the other series. Don't know why I did that. Probably because the cover's so pretty. And I want to read this because I am interested in Lyra's story, but I've heard some weird things about the second book in this series that's making me feel like, should I even bother with any of it? But I'm hanging on to it for now because it's a very good edition and I kind of want to read it. I do want to read it. That's why I'm keeping it. Next, I have Property by Lionel Shriver. This is a collection of short stories, I believe. My cousin bought this for me because she saw that I was reading The Mandibles by Lionel Shriver, which I really hated my reading experience of that, but she wasn't to know. And she bought me this because she thought that I was a fan, which I am not. This is that book. I want to read it because, again, I don't want to just get rid of books that I haven't read. But at the same time, it's Lionel Shriver, so do I want to actually read it? Then I have The Buried Giant by Kazuo Ishiguro. So I read Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro for my GCSEs and I loved it, and I saw that this was coming out, thought that it was set during the Stone Age. I love reading books set during the Stone Age, and got it. It isn't set during the Stone Age at all. It's set after the Roman age, so whenever that was, and I think I was a bit too young to try and read it when I tried to read it, which is true for the next 3 books I'm going to talk about. Well, next 2 and 3 including this one. So I definitely think that I do want to give this a go, but because my memory of trying to read it was struggle because I was 15 and didn't understand what I was reading, it's hard for me to convince myself to read this. But I have moved this off of these shelves and onto, I have like some, it's where I was previously filming my other videos, and now I've moved back to these shelves. Those square white bookshelves, I move my more immediate TBR books, and I have moved this onto those shelves, so hopefully I'll read it soon. I am definitely interested in it, and I do think that now I'm a little bit older I might be able to understand better the kind of setting and situation that we're in. Yes, continuing with, I tried to read this when I was younger and didn't understand it, I have Outlaw by Angus Donald. This is a Angus, did I say Angus? It says Meet the Godfather of Sherwood Forest, and this is a Robin Hood retelling. My dog's being weird. Settle down now. Good boy. Good boy, so clever. So this is a Robin Hood retelling. I definitely did try to read this when I was way too young to read it. I think it's very, very violent. It's got a lot of adult themes in it, and I hope that I will read and enjoy this at the time. I mean now. At the time it was just, I think, a bit too much for my brain. And then I have another Robin Hood dark retelling. This is, what do they call it? Shadow of the Wolf by Tim Hall. This one is forget everything you ever heard about Robin Hood. I was definitely on one, wasn't I? Again, I feel like this might be for children, but I'm not certain because I feel like I bought this in the like teen or children section of Waterstones, but don't quote me on that. It could be an adult book. Again, with this one, I remember I just wasn't fully able to get into it, but I might be able to better. I've got 2 Robin Hood retellings here, and it's because I do archery, and when I was book shopping when I was younger, I was obviously obsessed with Robin Hood. All of these books are definitely ones that I do want to get to, but I'm hesitant to get to, which is why I considered them for an unhaul, but I've decided not to unhaul them because I want to read them. Does that make sense? Am I being clear enough? I don't know. Next, I have the one book on here which is influenced from other people. Obviously all of these are slightly influenced by other people. This one is influenced by somebody in my life, and that is Mariana. This is Mariana by Monica Dickens. So this was the first ever Persephone book that I owned. I really love Persephone books because I think they're pretty, and I decided for some reason to buy one with a painting on the cover, which is a bizarre choice because I like the grey. Anyway, I bought this off of eBay and I was very, very excited for it, and I had it on my bookshelf, and my friend came along and said, oh, I read this, it's so boring. So it kind of put me off from reading it because I don't want to read a boring book, and I'm sad because it's pretty and I want to read it, but also Persephone books do tend to be quite boring for me, and so if this one's especially boring, ooh, do I want to read it? Yes! The next set of books that I have are books that I haven't owned for that long, but are just not immediately appealing to me. So the first one I have was a gift from my grandmother, and that is The Librarian by Sally Vickers. I believe that this is about a woman who goes to a small town and sets up a library. I just think it sounds boring, but I want to read it, but I do think it sounds boring. But I'm sure that there will be a point at some point where I do want to read a boring book. Just not immediately this second. Next, I have Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Leilani Taylor. I got from a secondhand bookshop. and I got overexcited because I'd heard of the title and I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds great. I read the blurb, I got so excited, and then I remembered that this used to have those really horrible covers of the weird masks and feathers, and then I realised, oh no, I'm confused, this isn't what I wanted to read. I do still want to give it a go because I am definitely feeling the pull more towards YA fantasy again, but it was just like immediately after I got home I remembered that this wasn't the one that I thought it was. I can't remember which one I thought it was, but it wasn't. It wasn't this. Next I have The Stolen Bicycle. This was one that my gran bought in a independent bookshop in, they have like a part in the bookshop where they sell slightly damaged books for cheaper. She bought this, she thought it sounded interesting, and then she gave it to me. It's such a pretty book, but because she bought it because she was interested in it, and then it was given to me and I had like no knowledge and no interest in it at all, I haven't had... Normally when I buy a book, I buy it because it sparks in my brain of like, I really want to read this. Whether then I remember it's not something I wanted to read, doesn't matter. This does sound really interesting, it looks really cool, the cover is lovely, but it's just because I didn't buy it, it isn't something that I immediately really want to read. Then I have Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. So I don't really know anything about this. I've seen a couple of things online or pictures of maybe the film, but I'm not really certain what it's about. I bought it because my friends were reading it and I felt left out, and so I bought it. It was from a secondhand bookshop. I think it was only £1, but as what, you know, it was a weird thing to do. I shouldn't have done it, but I own this now. I am interested in reading it, but it was one that I definitely, when I was going through my shelves looking for books to get rid of, was one that my eye kind of strayed to, like, hey, do I want to keep you? I don't know. Finally, for this stack of books that I haven't owned for that long, but I eyed up when I was trying to get rid of books, is Gather the Daughters by Jenny Malamed. I'm bad at reading names. Don't know why I bought this. So, like a year ago, I decided that I wanted to go into Waterstones and buy 2 books that I'd never heard of. I bought this and I bought The Book of Night Women by Marlon James. I was interested in this not because it says Handmaid's Tale, that's actually what's put me off because I really didn't enjoy The Handmaid's Tale, but just by the blurb it seemed interesting. It's about Ireland where girls kind of have their last summer of freedom before they have to become homemakers and wives and childbearers. So it sounds interesting, but I think there's just not that. Again, I just don't have so much of a pull and a desire to read it, but I don't want to just get rid of it because I bought it full price. This is The Tallest Stack. This one is technically just books that I've owned for such a long time that it's like actually ridiculous that I haven't read them yet. I also own some ones from my childhood that I've not read, like Christopher Mouse. I continuously tried to read and could not get through, but the Christopher Mouse isn't here. I'm not getting rid of Christopher Mouse. It's just a joke in my life now that I haven't read that. But yes, these are books that I've owned for a ridiculous amount of time. Some of them by authors that I have loved, so it's just weird that I haven't read them yet. The first one I have is The Once and Future King by T.H. White. I bought this because I read H is for Hawk, and this book is mentioned a lot. I feel like I could love this or I could hate it because it's like a classic high fantasy, it's an Arthurian legend retelling, but it's kind of the one that has, I feel like it's the one that everybody reads as like the base. Maybe I'm wrong. Personally, I'm not a big fan of wizards in fantasy. I think my problem with wizards in fantasy, just go off at wizards. I have a problem with wizards in fantasy. My problem with wizards in fantasy is that they are sometimes bound by rules. But sometimes if you have like a Merlin or a Gandalf kind of thing, and I'm sure that people that know more about it will be like, that's not true, you're wrong, but it's how I feel. Is that I feel like, are there rules for wizards? Like, if they need fire, they can be like, fire. Do you know what I mean? And I'm just not a big fan of that. I feel like people need to have a bit of a struggle, and I feel like wizards in fantasy just kind of don't. But maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts on wizards in fantasy. So anyway, this is The Once and Future King. It's about Arthur and Merlin, but not the fun Merlin we all know and love from BBC's Merlin. So it's a kind of classic fantasy. There's just something about it that doesn't spark joy to me, but I want to read it. Next I have, I'm gonna lump in a 3rd book here. Oh, the tower's gonna collapse. Here I have a whole bunch, 3 books, it's so dramatic of me. Wait a minute. Oh, well she's just snuck away from me, madam. This book's been sat here mocking me the whole time, obviously, when she's meant to be got rid of 2. Okay, now I have 4. I have a whole bunch of Tudor historical fiction. Now, let's talk about these books. So, when I did my A-levels, I did A-level in history and did Tudors focusing mainly on Elizabeth. And I am absolutely obsessed with the Elizabethan court and the politics and all of the things. I absolutely loved it. And when I went to uni, I did not study history, and so I missed it. And so I bought all of these books because I wanted to be in that in that world again, and never read any of them. So I'm going to go through them and talk about them. The thing with me and kind of Elizabethan or medieval fiction is I always am like, this is great, but where's the magic system? Because I just love court historical fantasy. The first pair that I have here are by Alison Weir, who is an Elizabethan historian. I have The Innocent Traitor and The Lady Elizabeth. I want to read them, but nothing has made me read them, even when I bought them and I was really missing the Elizabethan court. In first and second year of uni, if I was feeling like I wanted to read a certain genre, I would go to the secondhand bookshop and I would buy like 5 books in that genre here. And I also bought a lot of fantasy in secondhand bookshops. Some of it I've read, like I bought a lot of Brandon Sanderson, which was a good decision. And then I bought a lot of Brent Weeks, which was one of the worst decisions of my life. So I've got all these books. The first ones, as I said, are by Alison Weir, and I'm interested, but I just need to read them. I'm sure I'd love them if I actually just read them, because I read some of Alison Weir's history books on Elizabeth and loved them. So I just need to use my eyes and read the words. Then I have 2 Philippa Gregory's. I have read Tidelands by Philippa Gregory. Is that by Philippa Gregory? I also read her like Changeling, Storm something, Stormbringer? Don't think so. That whole series I read by Philippa Gregory. And then I got these, The White Queen and The Other Queen. The problem with these ones is that I feel like they're part of a bigger series that I'm just not, I just don't know. I don't know what series these are in. I don't know what number they are in the series. I feel like because it's history, it doesn't matter, because if you know what's happened, then you know what happens. But I don't know. I don't want to buy the whole series. I don't particularly want to read the whole series. I just want to either read these books or get rid of them. So there we are. Next, I have one from my big fantasy buying moment in first and second year of uni. The other thing that I bought a lot of when I was buying a lot of fantasy was a lot of Robin Hobb. Again, a very good decision. Here's one that I'm not so sure on. This is Theft of Swords by Michael J. Sullivan. It seems fun enough, but I just don't, there's nothing about this situation that's making me feel like I desperately need to read it immediately. So the next 2 books that I've got are ones that are by authors I have read and loved, so I don't know why I've not read them yet. The first one is Anna Dressed in Blood by Kendall Blake. I loved the 3 Dark Crowns series by Kendall Blake. Still couldn't really tell you what the titles of all the books were because they were kind of weird. Like there was like 3 Dark Crowns, 2 Dark this, 5 Dark this and that. It's like too many numbers. 1, 2 and 3 and 4. Just do it in order. It's weird to have so many weird numbers. Anyway, this is Anna Dressed in Blood. It's a book by her. I believe it's like a kind of spooky horror. Not for younger readers, it said on the back. Well, I feel like I'm old enough to read that probably. I'm really interested in reading this. I've just not gotten around to it, I think is the case here. It's just not had enough pull on it that I've gotten around to it. And so then when I was looking for stuff to unhaul, it was like, unhaul me. And then I have Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I really enjoyed Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I'm looking forward to the sequel. This doesn't really seem like my kind of thing. I kind of know what happens in this series because I don't think that you can just be on BookTube and Bookstagram and not know what happens in the Grisha trilogy. I tried to read Crooked Kingdom or whatever the first book in that kind of duology thing was and didn't understand it, and so I found out, hey, you could try and read this trilogy first, then you might understand that duology better. So that's what I decided to do. I bought this, haven't read it, and then I have books that I've owned for a very, very long time that I just need to read. First, I believe I unhauled this one as well, and then here it is. I didn't get rid of it. It is Death on the Ice by Robert Ryan. This is set in Antarctica on the Captain Scott expedition. I'm really interested in explorers where it goes badly. I'm very interested in it. I think it's really exciting and fun and very spooky. So I bought this book from a charity shop. Most of my books I buy from charity shops unless they are new releases that I'm really excited for, because generally I kind of think like eventually all of these books will end up in charity shops and that's when I'll nab them. So I got this from a charity shop. I'm interested in reading it. I just haven't. And I think it's just one of those where it's like not really grabbing my attention and demanding that I read it, which is basically what all of these books are, which is why I want to try and prioritize them, because I think by prioritizing them then I'll know whether to get rid of them or not. So next, I have The Fortunes by Peter Ho Davies. I won this on a Goodreads giveaway. Again, I just never got round to it, but I really want to read it. So again, I'm going to prioritise this one because it's kind of stupid that I've owned it for so long and haven't read it. We're down to our final four. First, I have Prince of Thorns by Mark Lawrence. This actually should have been in with the authors I've read and enjoyed. I really liked Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. I didn't love it like a lot of people did because I found the kind of battle scenes that are like a jump forward in time very odd, but I did enjoy the rest of it. I bought this, I tried to read it I think when I was a bit too young. I don't know what age group it's for, but what I do know is I was not in that age group unless it was for actual children. There does seem to be stuff in here that is a little bit too old and doesn't necessarily feel like YA and definitely doesn't feel like children's, especially because it's Con Golden and Robin Hobb and Peter V. Brett are on the back of this. Feels like it's adult, but it was in the children's section, which is why I bought it. I do want to read this because I remember it being really great, but when I was reading it I was like, I'm too young to read this. The House at Riverton by Kate Morton. I love the idea of this. I don't know why I've not read it. I really like the idea of this. Next I have The Call. This is another one that was massively talked about on BookTube. Not like as massively as say like anything by Rainbow Rowell, but was mentioned a fair amount to the point where when I saw it for sale in the secondhand bookshop in the damaged part was like, hey, I am gonna get that. This book is like so non-impactful in my mind that I continuously forget that I own it. I think it's about children who go to like a different dimension and have to fight to the death, kind of like the Hunger Games. And then finally I have The Maker of Swans. I bought this I believe because of Mercedes from Mercy's Bookish Musings. My problem with reading books that Mercedes recommends and also Jen Campbell is often they like books that are kind of magical realism, a little bit weird, fairy tale retellings, which I generally don't enjoy, but they influence me. My dog bit this book when it came in the post. I don't know if you can see, but there's like tooth marks in it. Yeah, I think this sounds interesting, but I do think it's a bit weird, which is what has put me off. I'm now sitting with these books and I'm wondering what to do with them, because I have just under 30 books that I want to prioritise, because I think what has happened with all of these books is when I bought them or when I was given them, a few of them that's not so true for, but for the most part when I got these books into my life I was excited for them, obviously, or I wouldn't have bought them. But then because they just sat on my shelves, often a lot of these I acquired at a time where I was starting my book collection, because before that I owned books, but I didn't have hundreds of books waiting to be read. And so I am thinking that what's happened is they've just kind of dropped through the cracks and I've been more excited for new books that I've gotten in or books that I've gotten from the library. And so I think what I want to do is I want to try and prioritise these so that they don't sit on my shelf for another 2 or 4 years completely unread. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and read at least one of these every month so that they don't get forgotten and left behind. Obviously, if I try and read at least one of these every month, it's going to take me over 2 years to finish all of these books. But I think that if after 2 years I still haven't read some of these, I do think for the most part, do I actually want to read them? I think that's my plan, is to try and prioritise these and to try and read them at least one every month to make sure that I do get down a stack of books that I own that don't massively drag me in to want to read them, because I can look at some of the books on my shelf and be like, oh, I really want to read that, or I can't wait to reread that in a few years. Whereas these, I'm like, I know that they hold potential and they hold promise, but there's just something about them that I just don't want to read. I'm going to try and prioritise them, and that is the moral of the story. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you have read any of these books and you really loved them or you really hated them, do I want to know if you really hated them? I definitely want to know if you really loved them, so tell me in the comments down below. I don't know if I want to know if you really hated them. Not sure. Maybe. If you feel very strongly about your hatred for them, then let me know. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe. I heard this joke once. What's a YouTube werewolf called? A like and subscribe. Hey. Okay, right. I'm gonna go and put all these books back on my shelf now. I think I'm gonna put them back on, I was originally gonna put them on pages outwards, which is why when I took that Philippa Gregory off the shelf, it was pages out, but I found that actually by doing that I want to read them even less, so I might put stickers on them or a bit of tape or something to mark them. Anyway, those are the books. I hope you enjoyed this video. Goodbye.